You're listening to Cover Your Assets, a podcast that discusses the timely and significant legal issues faced by employers. Kathleen Jennings is an attorney who has over 30 years of experience in advising employers as to their legal responsibilities and has written extensively about employment law in her popular Cover Your Assets blog. If your business has employees, you cannot afford not to have your assets covered.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cover Your Assets podcast, the premier and number one rated labor and employment law podcast that we do. That is my sister and resident expert, Kathleen Jennings. That we're number one because this is the only labor and employment law podcast that we do. But frankly, it's still the greatest. Don't you think there, sis?
You know, it's as great as the fact that you are my favorite brother. It's my favorite podcast, and you are my favorite brother.
Well, very nice. Well, last week we kind of teased this topic out, and we've got to thank somebody for this one because this is not entirely original content. Of course, we'll have some commentary and hopefully some colorful stories that go along with it. But Kathleen, why don't you introduce the topic? Who is most likely to sue you? And, of course, where we were able to garner this information from.
This information comes to us from one of my law partners, Martin Steckel, who put together some of this information based upon his years and years of experience, as well as his in-depth knowledge of a lot of different things. Marty knows a lot about a lot of different things. He's one of those people that is interested in learning. And one of the things he likes to learn about is what would make somebody most likely to sue you, because that's the kind of information that our clients really could use. It has some value for them.
And of course, and let's just say it. We don't have to, but Marty, if you and I were indeed Jewish, we could say he is a mensch, right? Just an all around good dude.
He is a mensch. And let's not forget that he does come from Western New York.
Western New York.
He is a fellow Western New Yorker.
Yes.
Grew up in East Bloomfield, New York, on a farm. And if you ever catch Marty, he can tell you some very colorful stories of his life on the farm. I think one that I remember involves riding hogs.
Riding hogs. Well, that could be taken a couple of different ways because out here in Oakfield, New York, lots of people ride hogs, but that is just another word for Harley-Davidson motorcycle.
These would be the four-legged hogs that sooner or later become pork.
Nice. All right. Well, with that being said, we have our topic introduced. And again, we're talking about who is most likely to sue you. And we are speaking about businesses being sued by employees or I guess even potential employees, as the case may be. I mean, you can be sued by a potential employee, not just one that you've hired.
Absolutely. You can be sued by an applicant. And that's where, 2 podcasts ago, we talked about interview questions, and part of the interview process is to help you weed out not only the people that are not right for the job, but also hopefully people that are going to cause you more problems down the line because they are possibly going to sue you, or they're just going to be that employee that takes up an unusual amount of time as for an HR person. It's that guy that just always has a complaint about something or is complaining about other employees, or we'll go through kind of the list of things that you want to look for so that you can avoid having that guy in your workplace.
Or gal.
But
yes.
I mean,
Oh, no, all right, we're not going to go there. Anyhow, and I think one of the important things that we should mention is that if you have an employee like this, it does not mean that they're going to sue, but you want to be proactive. So you may need to start documenting things. And if there is eventually litigation involved, documentation is key, correct?
Documentation is key when you're dealing with any employee. And I think it's also important to remember that even if you have that person, how about that? We'll say that person in the workplace that is causing problems, or you see as someone who could potentially sue you, you want to treat them the same way that you treat the other employees in the workplace. You want to be consistent in how you treat everybody, whether someone is a pain in your rear end or whether they're a model employee. Although obviously you want to treat your excellent employees somewhat differently than your poor employees, but that's a whole other issue that we could talk about in another podcast.
Look at you teasing out another topic. All right, so let's go through this list that Marty prepared for us. Number one, not likely to be a good or longer term employee. So, how do you determine what type of employee this is? They make their complaints through the system, make the system work for them, and are more likely to accept the company's resolution to a problem. What flesh that out for me.
That's a good sign. The kind of employee who takes their complaints through the system and respects and honors the way that their complaints are resolved by the system tend to be the kinds of employees that also respect the system. They're going along with the system. They know what the system is. If they have an issue, they bring it the correct way. So those are employees. That's a good sign. That's a good sign.
But the next ones, we have the employees that these are the bad signs.
Bad signs.
Bad signs. They're more likely to be shorter term or less desirable. So in other words, the bottom third of performers, I assume in any organization, you don't necessarily want to rank people, but there's different ways that you can rank employees based on the top third, the middling, and of course the bottom third. And I think, is it safe to say that even if you don't have, let's say, an actual scoring system, if you were to ask coworkers or supervisors, that they would be able to identify the bottom third of the pack?
I would hope that your supervisors would be able to tell you how their employees rank in terms of performance. There's a number of different factors you'd want to look at. Obviously, job performance, attendance, people that come to work every day, motivation, attitude, those types of things. Supervisors, immediate supervisors, ought to be able to assess the folks that work for them and tell you which of those employees are really good performers, which are not such good performers, based on those various factors. Yeah, someone who has a lot of absenteeism for no good reason, is probably going to be down in that bottom third. Whereas somebody who comes to work every day, gets there on time, that's someone that you want to value.
All right, and here's another one on the list of more likely to be a problem employee that could lead to litigation. And we know these employees, the chronic complainers. It's always something. Always something.
Always something. They're the pot stirrers. They're the complainers. Something's always not right. And we can actually probably move down the list. Not only are things not right, but it's never their fault. Nothing is ever their fault.
Yeah, and we're gonna break our tradition in terms of waiting to the end of the podcast for some stories, because I want to interject a few. And
you have stories from work, Tom?
I have plenty of stories. See, you have a boring work history.
Why don't you share one with us?
This I will. So, chronic complainer. I worked with someone who was indeed a chronic complainer. Just loved to complain about everything. My favorite complaint that they made is that now we were teachers at a educational facility, and one of our tasks was to clean the restrooms, which, let's be honest, nobody wants to clean the restroom. And if you're a teacher, you definitely don't want to clean the restroom. Anyhow, We all had complained chronically, I guess, in some way or another about having to clean the restroom. But this particular employee actually went to the MSDS sheets, which is the Material Safety and Data sheets, and determined that one of the bathroom cleaning supplies required, from her interpretation, like a full body suit to be able to use. So she got all the employees together, and not me, because I had left by this point. I heard from some people that I used to work with that this had happened, and presented it to management, stating that if they didn't have the proper materials to use this particular form of cleaning solution, which we had been using for years, that they would all report the fact that we're using this caustic chemical to get rid of the doo-doo stains in the restroom. Now, what do you think eventually happened to that employee?
That employee sounds like the employee most likely to be voted the union steward in a unionized environment, actually. So that's my guess. Am I wrong?
Yeah, they eventually got fired. They got fired because they did wind up having a workman's comp claim, and then they stopped providing the necessary paperwork to continue employment, so they just eventually let them go.
I think they missed their calling.
Yes. They were a fantastically chronic complainer. Anyhow.
Well, I actually have a story, Tom.
Well, let's hear it.
It has nothing to do with my employment, but it does have to do with a case that I defended. And there was a woman who sued her company, and she sued the company for harassment. So during her deposition, I asked her to give me all of the examples of harassment that she had experienced in the workplace. And she looked at me with a straight face, and she said that her supervisor had stood in her doorway and he had belched.
Belched?
Belched.
Like,
that was it.
He just belched.
He just belched.
I mean, I could literally belch right now because I've got a soda. Should we do that, or is that just, if anyone's listening, they probably just go, "That's so classless." Let's try it.
Go for it, because you can belch on command. We know that. So now I'm going to complain that you're harassing me during our podcast.
But I am not standing in a doorway.
That's true.
This is
true. You're definitely not standing in my doorway. But that was her complaint.
Yes.
And needless to say, we did get that case thrown out on summary judgment.
So it kind of ran out of gas.
Oh, very nice, Tom.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. So let's look at some of the other stuff here. May already know the way to the courthouse, Martin writes. So workman's compensation litigation, maybe somebody that's a chronic workman's comp person. Now, here's a question for you. I obviously can't discriminate against somebody on the basis of the fact that they've had multiple workman's comp claims, but is there a way that an employer can find out, other than, say, through the grapevine, that there's a sort of a chronic suer?
With regard to actual lawsuits, because all federal court dockets are online now, and a lot of state court dockets are online, you can actually find out pretty easily if somebody has filed some kind of lawsuit. Now, workers' comp is different because they're all state-run, state systems. I don't think those dockets are publicly available. But certainly for lawsuits, you can run a check if you want to. Some employers will run a background check. So in addition to criminal history, you could look for litigation history. Is that something you can use as far as determining whether or not you're going to hire a potential employee? Or I can't see where that would be considered discrimination. I would say if you find that information and you have better candidates for the job, I would go with one of the better candidates.
Spoken like an attorney. That was fantastic.
Just saying.
There's a first here. I mean, we belched on air. I think this is great podcasting. I mean, if there is some kind of podcast awards for labor and employment law podcasts, this is going to be the episode that we're gonna put up there to be nominated, and we're gonna win.
I don't know. I mean, I'm still kind of partial to the sex police myself.
The sex police? And now check this out. Are you ready? Listen to this soundbite.
Sure.
Are we ready?
Here come the sex police. They're at your bedroom door, moving in next door, searching from floor to floor. You know what they're looking for. Someone's always keeping score. Every time you dip the oar, love isn't fun no more. Love isn't fun no more.
You can't use that. Then you'll have to pay royalties.
No, well, I used only enough of it that we wouldn't get sued by Todd Rundgren. But yes, that has been queued up for a little while. I've been waiting for the opportunity to use it, and that was going back in our archives. The sex police was mentioned during our workplace romance episode, so that has nothing to do with our topic today, other than the fact that all topics are indeed related. So let's get back to this particular.
They're related
list.
To the workplace, Tom.
And labor and employment law. Right.
Labor and employment law. And in the end, it's all about covering your assets.
Covering your assets. All right. So let's kind of recap what we have so far. The employee most likely to sue is going to be your bottom third, chronic complainer. There's somebody that has sued former employers. They've been involved in litigation, and there are ways, I guess, of finding those types of things out. So as our legal expert and attorney Kathleen Jennings advised, it should be part of the information that maybe you seek out. It can't be the only information you use in determining whether you're going to hire an employee or not. But hey, you know what you got to do on that one. So let's look at this one. And I always find this an interesting topic. An individual who does not accept criticism well, even constructive criticism, and who tends to blame others for any of their problems and does not accept responsibility for their own difficulties. That sounds like me.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that, Tom. Have you sued any of your employers?
Yeah, actually, I sued one.
Okay. Well,
but the thing was is that
but
nothing was my fault in that situation.
And that's the employee. See, the employee who can't accept constructive criticism is never going to improve their job performance, and they're going to blame issues or problems on something else, like, well, it can't be me, so you must be picking on me because of my sex, because of my race, because of my disability, because of anything other than the fact that I screwed up today at work.
Yeah, I mean, let's be fair. Most people don't like criticism, but on some level, we all have to learn to accept it to a degree, as long as it's fair. So, for instance, if you come to work late every day and your boss says you're coming to work late every day, that's not constructive criticism. That's just stating facts. So those are the types of things that I guess you have to take into consideration. But I think, as Marty puts in here, there's people, these are also the kind of employees that look for a conspiracy. It's almost like they're, we talk about conspiracies. It's kind of a big thing in the news. You have all these different conspiratorial theories that are on the internet. And unfortunately, I think when people start to go down that path, they just start to look for ways to support their particular conspiracy. That can be at a national level. That can be at an employee level. They could say, oh, well, I noticed that the last 3 people that were terminated all were this sex or this gender or this race, whatever. And so I guess that's something that you have to be very careful of. And I think those conspiracy theories, boy, that's a tough word to spit out. They kind of like, it's what we used to call water cooler talk. You sort of hear about it in the workplace. So as an employer, you should be cognizant of the types of things that people are saying about your workplace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, now it's a little tougher having water cooler talks because a lot of people are still working remotely. But employees still talk with one another.
Yes.
And a good HR person will have their head to the ground and try to pick up on any kind of disturbing conspiracy theories or things like that.
All right, number 4. This is one I think we've kind of talked about a little bit. And are we able to put this material into our show notes?
No.
Really? None of it?
I don't think so. I don't have permission.
Oh, well, we're going to ask. We'll see. Well, hopefully we can get permission to put some of this information in the show notes. So number 4 is someone who is a marginal employee, fearful for their job, whose complaint coincides with a discipline or other realization that things are not going well. We really have talked about handling, I think this was the episode of handling employee terminations with dignity or something along those lines. You can sort of smell.
I think
that when you're going to get terminated, right? I mean, there's sort of a feeling in the air. I guess I would liken it to if you were outside on a day where you're just about to have a thunderstorm that's coming in, and there's just this feeling in the air. And I don't know, real or perceived, if an employee thinks that they're about to get terminated, flight or fight, and many of them are going to fight.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful, beautiful way of putting it, Tom.
Thank you. It was beautiful.
Yes, but yes, we have talked about these people because these are the people that are going to use complaints of discrimination or harassment as a shield from termination.
A shield.
Because then they're going to hide behind, actually they'll hide behind the shield of retaliation once they make the complaint.
Well, this could also be, I mean, I've worked with people that have, suddenly become injured, and, you get into the workman's comp realm, and now it becomes much more difficult to terminate somebody that has a workman's comp claim, because then, it looks like you're firing them because they just put in a claim. So I think that's
Depends
a bit of a
on
tactic
what state
too.
you're in.
Well, in New York, I am in the only state in the United States that ends in the letter K. Yeah, which is the same letter as your first name. K.
Wow.
What a coincidence.
It is a coincidence, an odd coincidence.
But coincidence starts with C.
Anyway.
Number 5.
What about the next one, Tom?
Number 5, someone who does not want to be working anyway and may be looking for an excuse to quit. So again, sort of somebody that, there's that criminal that does something just so they can get caught. Maybe a guy that's homeless is looking for a way to get arrested so that they go spend the weekend in jail and get some food and things that they want. Sometimes, this is always the scenario. I mean, this is a fairly common scenario, at least that I've seen. You talk to somebody and you go, "Hey man, what happened?" "Well, I quit." "Well, they said they fired you." No, man, I quit." When you kind of know that the employee got fired, because nobody likes to say, I got fired, unless they're vengeful and they, we're spiteful or whatever, spiteful and vengeful. But I mean, you could see this situation, that says have exaggerated claims of what happened to them, and when they quit, and then their spouse gets angry and encourages litigation. Now, I'm a spouse, and I get angry when people treat my spouse improperly. So I get that.
Well, and there's also, I have an example, and I think I've brought this one up before, where I had a case where a woman, she didn't want to work anymore for whatever reason. And she quit her job, and her husband got mad at her for quitting her job because now they have one less income. So she told her husband that she quit her job because her female supervisor was sexually harassing her and trying to change her into a lesbian. This is her allegation, not mine. And so now that she's got that out there with the husband, he's the one that says, well, if she's doing all this to you, you better sue. So now next thing you know, she's pursuing this in court because she can't take it back. And it's all false. It's all made up. But she had to cover herself with her husband and save face, and ends up in litigation with these allegations.
Yeah. Well, a lie breeds more lies. So it's unfortunate. I mean, there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do to defend against that. But I'm sure that at some point they probably sensed that this was a problem employee and, it just got a little bit out of hand. But I don't know. I wasn't there. But that's just my guess. So, next one is number 6 on our list. Someone who is always making veiled or not so veiled threats about going to call a lawyer about this or that problem.
That sounds like U2.
U2 is an Irish band that is famous for the song Sunday, Bloody Sunday. That is not me.
I think it sounds like you, my brother, who's always threatening to get his lawyer's sister involved in situations.
Which is a thinly veiled threat, because you very rarely get involved. Let's just put that out there.
That's true.
I might, I make a statement. This is the statement that that I'd make. I'd be like, well, I do have a sister who's an attorney. In fact, she is a labor and employment law attorney. Oh, that carries a little bit more weight than, oh, really? What kind of attorney is she? Oh, she's a personal injury lawyer. It's like, yeah, we're not scared of them. But as opposed to my son who would say, you do know that I have an aunt who is a labor and employment law attorney. So, yeah, we throw that out there. And you know how many times that has been effective in resolving our problems?
Do tell, Tom.
None. It's never.
Wow.
It's.
I really thought I had more
worked.
power than that, but thanks for making my day with that.
We were, with those situations that came up, we were like those guys that, we don't have anything in our poker hands and we're bluffing, and then their bosses just go, yeah, whatever, sue us, go ahead. So, anyhow, we got one left here. This has been a very spirited episode.
It has.
We've had a belch. We've had a sex police drop in as far as the music. And now, number 7, anyone who drops you a note or begins the discussion of the complaint by saying, it doesn't bother me so much because I can handle it, but I want to make sure that nobody else around here has to go through what I had to put up with. Yes. Let's call this the benevolent plaintiff. Yeah, we should talk to Marty, and if he does rewrite this, the benevolent plaintiff. Hey, look.
I think you're right.
You know what? I'm not suing you because I'm worried about me and whatever potential financial gain that I have. In fact, I'm going to give all the money to charity. My concern is, what about everyone that comes after me? It's touching.
It is touching, very benevolent, and not really benevolent, but it's a nice show of benevolence. We'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, and I can hear this type of conversation would probably happen with an HR person. They'll when somebody comes in and complains and goes, "Hey, I don't want to be a complainer, but I'm going to complain." And evidently, if I didn't want to be a complainer, I'd just not complain, but I'm going to complain anyway. And I'm not complaining because of me. I'm complaining because I'm worried about the greater good of this company. And that's a warning sign to say, yeah, we need you out of here.
That's a warning sign to say, I need to get a witness in the office with me right now, and I need to document what this conversation is, because this is somebody who, even though they claim they are not complaining on their own behalf, since they are the person there complaining, you need to take it down as their complaint and act accordingly. So if they're coming in and saying, it doesn't bother me so much that Tom belches in my door and tells dirty jokes every day, but I think other people might be bothered by it. You're going to have to deal with that as a complaint and act accordingly. And you're going to have to probably have a sit down with Tom about his behavior in the workplace.
All right. And maybe a reasonable accommodation may be that you give him some antacids. That's a whole nother topic for another day. Antacids in the workplace. We haven't done that episode yet.
Yeah. That would depend upon what Tom tells you about why he is belching in the doorway.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, listen, special thanks to Marty. Hopefully he listens to this episode and doesn't go, what the heck were you guys thinking on that day? And but it's some good stuff here. In all seriousness, it is a very serious topic. We've had some quips and tried to make light of it just to keep everything entertaining. But to those of you that own businesses or that are HR professionals, again, going back to the business or the beginning of the podcast, the employees that are not likely to sue you are the ones that they follow the rules, that go through the system. If they do have a complaint, they're around for a while. You know who these employees are. That's not to say that a good long-term employee can't have a bad situation that could potentially end up in litigation, but we can say it's less likely. Look out for the habitual complainers and those types of situations, and you can sort of get the sense of that type of employee as they begin to do the things that they do. And again, document. Make sure you're not having conversations with them alone. And I guess that should pretty much cover everything in terms of this particular topic, which, again, I think is a very important one. Because if you're talking about covering your assets, like you said, best way to lose money is through a bunch of lawsuits, because win or lose, you're still probably going to lose money.
Absolutely. I would say also, Tom, I would point out that the way to discover some of these traits is through a good interview technique, asking the right questions, listening to the answers. And that will give you an idea of, particularly when you ask people about maybe past supervisors they liked or past supervisors they didn't like, or past work situations that they could have handled better or something. Asking people those kinds of questions and then listening to their answers will give you an idea potentially of what kind of employee this person is.
Absolutely. All right. Well, again, a great episode. So let's finish it off with your contact information.
You can always shoot me an email at kjj@wimlaw.com.
And of course, you can send questions, comments, topic suggestions, all that kind of good stuff there. And please, if you are listening to the podcast and enjoying it, share it, review it, do what you can. We've seen a steady increase in listenership.
Excellent.
So we're not going the wrong way. After this episode, it's to the stars. But anyhow, on behalf of myself, your host, Thom Jennings, and my sister, now I can't even close because my sister, we do this by Zoom, okay? And she's giving me a sister look. Like, just, she did the old rolling her eyes going, oh, there he goes again. And I was using the radio voice too, so you were kind of giving me that face.
Well, and you know, Tom, what that does is that kind of tells me how you react to authority. And so I've learned some good information about you if I ever needed to consider hiring you as an employee.
Yeah. And I will tell you, once my supervisor, a previous supervisor, brought me in the office and said, Tom, you never accept criticism. And I said, you know what? You're right. Anyhow. On that joke, we will say thank you, and we'll see you next time on the Cover Your Assets podcast. And again, special thanks out to fellow Western New Yorker Marty for that great stuff today. And hopefully we'll be, who knows, maybe someday we'll get him on the podcast.
Maybe we will.
Stranger things have happened. All right, until next time, this is your host, Thom Jennings, and our resident expert, Kathleen Jennings, who is not giving me a face this time. We'll see you next time on the Cover Your Assets, the Labor and Employment Law Podcast.